Good morning, student. Today we are going to discuss about reflexes. Now, what is reflex? Reflex is an automatic, involuntary, reproducible response to a specific stimuli. Reflex always need a part of CNS, that is brain or spinal cord, except some reflex, that is gut reflex and axon reflex. Now, the reflex pathway consists of number one, receptor, a afferent pathway, and a integrated center, in the spinal cord, indicating center in the spinal cord at the anterior muscle. From there, efferent neuron to the effector organ, that is usually muscle. So, reflex to occur, this receptor is usually muscle spindle. It sends the information via 1A or the 2B, 1A or the 2 afferent fiber. Then it goes to the integrating center, that is the spinal cord. From the spinal cord, efferent pathway, that is the alpha motor neuron. This alpha motor neuron supplies to the agonist muscle, that is the extrafusal fiber of the agonist muscle, and agonist muscle will contract briefly, then relax. After that, at the same time, the antagonist muscle, when agonist contract, the antagonist muscle relax. This is known as reciprocal innervation, which occurs at the same time. From 1A afferent fiber, it goes to the spinal cord. From there, inhibitory interneuron, that is the Golgi-Bottle neuron. That is the Golgi-Bottle inhibitory interneuron that supplies the efferent nerve fiber, alpha motor neuron to the extrafusal muscle fiber, and extrafusal muscle fiber of antagonist muscle relaxed. Now, there are different type of reflex. These are, number one, deep reflex, also known as deep jerk or tendon jerk or simply jerk. Again, superficial reflex, and sphincteric reflex or the visceral reflex. Now, this deep reflex, deep jerk, usually monosynaptic in nature, and superficial reflex are polysynaptic in nature. Now, the deep reflex. When a tendon of a lightly stretched muscle is given a single sudden sharp blow by a patella or the percussion hammer or the knee hammer, that muscle contract briefly, followed by relaxation. This is known as deep tendon jerk or simply jerk or the tendon jerk. Remember that the tendon of the lightly stretched muscle to be stuck. Now, this is known as tendon jerk as because tendon is struck by sudden single sharp blow. When tendon is given a sudden single sharp blow by a percussion hammer or the patella hammer, it will cause stretching of muscle that stimulate muscle spindle, that send the impulse via one afferent integrated at spinal cord. Efferent impulse goes through alpha motor neuron that causes contraction of the extrafusal fiber of agonist muscle. At the same time, the antagonist muscle will relax by reciprocal innervation. That's why it is known as deep tendon jerk. And remember, the single sudden sharp blow is given by this percussion hammer or the patellar hammer. This percussion hammer has a long plastic handle or long metallic handle and has a rubber piece. This rubber piece has one broad end and one pointed end. Broader end used for eliciting the reflex of broad tendon like tendo-Achilles or the tendo-calcaneus, and sharper end, that is the pointed end, used for other tendon like the bicep tendon, tricep tendon, like the elicitation of the jaw joint, and also patellar tendon joint. This hammer has also a pointed end. This pointed end used for superficial, to elicit the superficial reflex. Okay, this pointed end is used also for superficial reflex. Now, this is monosynaptic reflex. Remember that always give strike to the patellar tendon, not to the muscle belly itself, as the muscle belly is somewhat excitable to the direct mechanical stimulation. So, not to give a blow to the muscle belly itself, you have to give strike to the tendon that causes stretching of the muscle. That is known as deep tendon reflex or deep jerk. Now, there are some grading of the reflex. The grade are grade 0, that means no response. Grade 1, that means reflex is diminished. That means reflex is diminished, like normal ankle jerk. Grade 2, reflex is brisk, like normal knee jerk. Grade 3, very brisk, present in case of tension, anxiety, etc. And grade 4, it is clonus. So, clonus is an important sign for pyramidal tract lesion or the corticospinal tract lesion. And clonus is always associated with spasticity, clonus is always associated with Babinski sign, and clonus is always associated with extensor plantar reflex. What is clonus? So, clonus is rhythmical, alternate contraction and relaxation. Okay, group of muscle and their antagonist. In response to sudden, sustained, passive stage. Okay. So clonus may be true clonus when this contraction and relaxation movement, when this contraction and relaxation movement occur more than equal to 6 at a time, and it is associated with the upper motor neuron lesion, it is associated with the plasticity, it is associated with the extensor plantar response, and pseudoclonus. Pseudoclonus is when the clonus occur, pseudoclonus. When the clonus occur less than 6 at a time, it is associated with tension, anxiety, and it is associated with the flexor plantar response. Now, you have to elicit the reflex. You have to elicit the reflex. You have to elicit the reflex bilaterally, and you have to write down the result for both sides of the limb. To perform the reflex, following prerequisites are very important. What are the prerequisites? Prerequisite. Subject should be relaxed. Explain the total procedure. Contracting muscle area should be totally exposed. Stand on the right side of the subject. Now hold the patellar hammer by the help of index finger and thumb, like this, and give a sudden single sharp blow by the swinging or the twisting movement of your wrist. Single sharp blow by the swinging movement of your wrist. Hold like this, and swinging movement. Okay? So, hold patellar hammer in between thumb and index finger. And give sudden single sharp blow by swinging movement of your wrist joint. Okay. Now note the contraction of the muscle. Followed by movement of the limb or contraction of the muscle first, followed by movement of the limb or flexion or the extension of the that corresponding limb. Now elicit the reflex bilaterally. Note the result. Okay. Now, if there is no response, in case of maybe tendon jerk, if there is no response, go for reinforcement. Technique or the gendrasic manual. Now, what are the different results of reflex? We know the gait. Now, what are the different type of result? The result may be number one, no response. No response means no contraction of muscle. Seen in lower motor neuron lesion. Also seen in injury to afferent path, that is teres dorsalis. Injury to the anterior horn cell, that is polio, myelitis. In case of reflex is bilaterally absent, in case of shock, severe shock, okay, and reflex is also absent in case of severe spinal injury. Now, there may be reflex may be increased, that is known as exaggerated. Reflex may be increased, that is known as exaggerated. In case of tetanus, thyrotoxicosis, tension or anxiety, may be exaggerated, and reflex may be brisk. That means, like the normal nature, reflex may be brisk in case of upper motor neuron lesion, normally the descending pathway keep motor neuron, normally the descending pathway or the upper motor neuron keep these reflexes under check. So, in case of upper motor neuron lesion, the inhibitory modulation of the upper motor neuron, or the corticospinal tract or the pyramidal tract is withdrawn, so the response is brief in case of upper motor neuron lesion. Reflex may be delayed relaxation, or the relaxation time is increased, seen in case of myxedema, severe hypothyroidism, and sometimes in hypothermia. Reflex may be normal in normal healthy person, and reflex may be pendular, like pendular movement, more than 3 to and fro movement in diminishing pattern. In case of knee jerk, pendular reflex is seen in case of cerebellar lesion. This different type of the response can occur. Now, the generic maneuver. Sometimes reinforcement technique. This is the reinforcement technique, interesting maneuver. Sometimes the briskness of knee jerk or other tendon jerk is reduced or appears to be absent. In these cases, generic maneuver technique is done. It acts by increase the sensitivity of muscle spindle, increase the sensitivity of the muscle spindle due to increased gamma motor neuron drive, and also it causes increased excitability of anterior muscle and alpha motor neuron. For to elicit the reflex in lower limb, to elicit reflex in lower limb, ask the subject to hook each finger together, and pull them apart. To hook each finger together and pull them apart. To elicit the reflex at the lower limb, ask the subject to hook his fingers together and pull them apart. And to elicit the reflex for upper limb, ask the subject to clench his teeth or to make a fist of other hand. Ask the subject to clench his teeth or make a fist. When you elicit this reflex at the left bicep tendon, ask the subject to clench his teeth, ask the subject to make a fist of the right hand. Or for lower limb, hook his finger and try to pull them apart. Okay? Remember that general maneuver lasts for less than 1 second. Last for less than 1 second. So you have to give or you have to strike simultaneously at the same time of the general maneuver. At the same time of the general maneuver. Okay? Now